So I would like to ask our president to be calm and not to answer anything. And I think his comments about disinformation, space, it was not good.
It has been an astonishing week in terms of this war on words between the Trump administration and President Zelensky. The US president blamed Kyiv for starting the war, which just kind of raised eyebrows across the world. I'm sure champagne corks were popping in the Kremlin. But Donald Trump branded President Zelensky a dictator and claimed incorrectly that his popularity rating has plummeted to just 4%.
President Zelensky talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that basically couldn't be won. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions of people have unnecessarily died. And you can't bring a war to an end if you don't talk to both sides. You got to talk. They haven't been talking for 3 years. So we hope to see a ceasefire soon and to reestablish stability in Europe and the Middle East. He refuses to have elections. It's low in the real Ukrainian polls. I mean, how can you be high with every city is being demolished? It's hard to be high. Somebody said, oh, no, his polls are good. Give me a break.
I suppose the question we're asking is, I wonder if President Trump had a conversation with President Putin about free and fair elections, but that's perhaps a question for another day. Now, in response, President Zelensky claimed that Trump was living in a Russian disinformation space, which led White House officials to accuse Mr. Zelensky of insulting the American president. I saw that J.D. Vance had some quite sort of strong words against President Zelensky. Now, the Americans have also cancelled a joint press conference in Kyiv yesterday. So it's clearly there is this deepening feud between the two countries. And of course, Elon Musk has waded in too. He's accused President Zelensky of running a fraud machine, feeding off the dead bodies of soldiers. And he has claimed that President Zelensky is despised in Ukraine. Well, let's now see how that all is being received in Ukraine. Delighted to speak with a Ukrainian opposition MP who represents the Odessa region in Ukraine, Oleksii Goncharenko. Oleksii, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi.
What do you make of this war of words that has happened over the last week? What's your response?
It's very bad. It's very bad for Ukraine. It's catastrophic for Ukraine. It's also bad for the United States, but it's catastrophic for us because the United States is our main military ally, without which, like, hundreds of thousands of people can die. So the price is too high. We are not in a kindergarten here, so I don't want to deepen these things by giving some sessions and new accusations. I think that I can't ask anything from President Trump. So I would like to ask our president to be calm and not to answer anything. And I think his comments about disinformation, space, it was not good. The worst thing to do with President Trump is to criticize him publicly. And we shouldn't do this. We're very thankful to American people for all support we are receiving. And we hope that President Trump will continue to support Ukraine because we have a common enemy. Putin is very clear about this. This is his war not just against Ukraine. This is his war against Anglo Saxons, how he quoted, meaning United States, United Kingdom, free world. So we have this common enemy and he should be stopped. And we need to work together here. And for us, it's absolutely essential. So that's what I think. And I think that this third is now on more personal level. And I hope that both presidents will go out of it because we need these relationships. They can think whatever they want about one another, but we need to work together.
So it's really interesting to hear your tone. I mean, you're yourself saying you're wanting to be very considered with your language and restrained. And interesting to just hear what you were saying about your own President Zelensky. So would you advise him, do you think he was wrong to have said what he said about disinformation? And do you think he should, very much sort of think about his language now with President Trump and the new administration?
Yes, I do think so. Again, the price is too high. It's not about ego of anybody. It's about human lives. And so we can't risk losing American support. Just can't. So that's something which should be in the head of any politician who now speaks about this. And first of all, the president, definitely, as the main person.
But what if the language from the White House, it continues to be very aggressive and untrue? Because, it's not true that Ukraine provoked this war, or that
it's not true.
It's absolutely not true, categorically not true that Ukraine started this war. How would you respond to that? Because if somebody makes these very factually inaccurate, very wrong-headed accusations, surely you have the right to defend yourself. What would you advise him to say?
That's exactly, you're absolutely right. That there is things where you can't keep silence, and who started this war, it's important, but you shouldn't do this in any offensive way. By the way, Zelensky commented not this point, but he commented that he has 4% of support. That was offended him. I think it's much more important, definitely, who started this war. Everybody knows in the world that it was Russia. They attacked in the night, they bombed our cities, and still they're continuing this war. And I think President Trump knows this too. I heard what he said that day in Mar-a-Lago. He didn't say Ukraine started the war. There was no such words. He said something that it could be prevented and it was not done enough and all this stuff. So I think we need just to go out and very cold-bloodedly say, everybody knows who started the war. It's not a question at all. And we're sure that President Trump also knows this. That's all. That's all how it could be answered. Again, so this is just reality, which nobody says it does not exist. So we need to just, but again, cold-blooded, again, with a very polite language. And I don't want, to give justification to anybody in the United States or anywhere else, just to say, this country, Ukraine, they're not grateful. We don't need to support them. They're not speaking the right language or anything like this. Because again, the stakes are too high.
And what is the mood about President Zelensky in Ukraine, Oleksii? I mean, Elon Musk made some quite pointed comments. He claimed that Zelensky is despised in Ukraine. How do ordinary Ukrainian people feel about President Zelensky?
First, I should say that definitely it's only Ukrainian people who should decide this. Is Zelensky despised, or he's loved, or anything like this? It's only Ukrainians can do, right? So that's something we can remind. I think reality is always in between. Zelensky is not despised, but Zelensky is not loved by everybody for sure. We have a lot of questions to Zelensky about country was prepared to the war, about what's going on now, about his diplomacy and so on. But the main thing, it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter what numbers Zelensky has today, because what I can assure you, and as you said, I am from opposition, and as you hear, I'm not a super supporter of Zelensky, but I can tell you, we can't have elections. That's physically impossible. That's not because Zelensky doesn't want elections. It's just physically impossible. When missiles are falling on your head, you can't have elections. There were no elections between 1935 and 1945 in the United Kingdom, and it's clear why. And fortunately, at that time, United Kingdom, there was no German soldiers on the island itself, right? But there were bombs, but there was bombing, there was the war, and there were no elections. So we are in the even more difficult situation because there are Russian soldiers on our soil. So we can't have elections today. So first we need to receive peace, and security guarantees that Russians will not attack us exactly the day we will go to polling stations. And then we definitely should have elections, definitely, but after hostilities will be ended.
And 3 years into this conflict, I think it's about 3 years to the day, how open has President Zelensky been with other political parties, for example? I mean, you're an opposition member of parliament. Is there a lot of discussion with President Zelensky and his team about what's happening, or does he manage this with a small circle of people?
Unfortunately, he has clear autocratic tendencies. He more rely on very short, very narrow circle of people. He said this publicly in press conference when he was asked, maybe it's a good idea to create national unity government like Churchill did, like now Israel did. And he said, I have 5-6 managers whom I believe, so I will work with them. So that's what he is doing. Me personally, I think it's not the best idea. And I think the best answer to President Trump when he said that Zelensky has low numbers would be just saying, okay, let us create big national unity government. Everybody are on board. We're all fighting for the country, not against one another. That would be the best answer. Unfortunately, we have things like, for example, last week, previous President Poroshenko was sanctioned by Zelensky just personally. And he is now MP, one of opposition leaders, and he was just sanctioned just by personal decision of Zelensky, calling him pro-Russian. He made his own mistakes. Nobody is perfect in the world, but he's definitely not pro-Russian. He was one who fought with Putin between 2014 and 19, and from that time, Zelensky is doing this. So there are problems inside, but they're not so critical that we are not dictatorship. And so it's not true to say that Ukraine is dictatorship. No, we are democracy, but with problems, and martial law, 3 years of martial law is definitely hurting democracy for sure. And where the first thing we will need to rebuild after the end of hostilities will be our democracy.
And in terms of the citizens of Ukraine, Oleksii, how are they feeling 3 years in? I mean, they must be incredibly exhausted. They've suffered a huge amount of loss of life, of young men who've gone to fight and not come back. What's the mood like now? Is the mood tired and exhausted and willing to have a peace deal, or are people fired up again by these comments from Donald Trump and people want to fight?
You cannot imagine how exhausted we are in time. It's already 11th year of war and 3 years of full-scale invasion. Every day tragedies, every day suffering. People dying every day, both on front lines and in our cities from Russian missile and drone attacks. It's very difficult. Do we want peace? We want peace. But the peace should be fair, or as much fair as possible. So when you're asking, do people want peace deal? Yes, people want peace deal, but this deal should be first not disgusting for us, and secondly, it should be really stable one. It should be accompanied with security guarantees that it is a peace deal, not a ceasefire, short ceasefire when Putin will prepare for a next attack. That's what we are worrying about, and that's the main thing. So when Donald Trump is saying, "I am making a deal for you," I would say, "Yeah, I would like to see Ukrainians at the table." But main thing for us is not to be at the table, but to have a good result. So I would tell, this is our red lines, dear President Trump. If you can make a deal for us, which is in line with our red lines, thank you so much. Do it, please. If not, we will not accept this deal. That's all.